Hello, this is Future Rob cutting in during post-production here to warn you that this episode is about a movie which has a very hard R rating, and it's based around what very many people would think of as offensive and adult humor. This movie contains heavy profanity, jokes about religious figures and concepts, death and disfigurement of adults and children, prison rape, STDs, and other such things. While we don't necessarily approve of it all, we do honestly recap and talk about it all without bleeps. So, if that's not something you're comfortable listening to an open discussion about, Gila and I are totally fine with you skipping over this episode. We still appreciate you. Now, back to the past.
You know what, Gretchen? You know what you can do?
Don't say something you're going to regret.
Go.
I'm warning you, Jeff.
Fly.
Don't you say it.
Go fly a kite, Gretchen. Go fly a kite.
Hello and welcome to Modern Technology Watches. I am Rob Vincent.
I am Gila Drazen, and welcome to our very special Shavuot edition of Modern Technology Watches.
And if you don't know what that is, there will be a glossary provided very soon. But I should briefly explain that this is the podcast where Gila and I, a married couple of movie geeks who are constantly sharing cinematic things we love and or like and or are amused by on some level with one another. We, every so often, pick something out of our combined DVD collection that one of us knows and one of us doesn't, and we will watch it together and talk about it.
Exactly. So I realize that I'm going to have to wait until I reveal to you what the movie is to explain why this is the special Shavuot edition. And it's not because we're eating cheesecake. So hold on for 1 second. I'm going to go grab the DVD off the shelf, and then we can talk about it.
Okay. The shelf is located very near to where we're recording. So
our studio apartment.
I have not seen what she's selecting. I have no prior knowledge of this. She's getting her cans back on there.
I am back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
That's a chair.
It hit my chair. Okay. So, this is the movie.
It's called The 10.
It's called The 10.
Okay, apparently from the cover art here, I have the DVD in my hand now. This is apparently a comedy. It's from the director of Wet Hot American Summer, which we've watched together and enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
Adam Brody, Rob Corddry, Famke Janssen, Carrie Kenny Silver, Ken Marino, Gretchen Mol, Oliver Platt, Paul Rudd, Winona Ryder, and Liev Schreiber. I know about 2/3 of these humans.
So, if you read the back, it will explain.
No one will mistake Jeff Riegert, Paul Rudd, for Moses or even Charlton Heston, but they all have something in common. Like Moses and Heston, Jeff's job is to introduce the world to the 10 Commandments. But in David Wain's loopy comedy, The 10, he is not exactly the picture of virtue. ... In fact, surrounded as he is by gigantic replicas of the famous stone tablets, the genial host to this special presentation is so busy juggling wife Gretchen, Famke Janssen, and girlfriend Liz, Jessica Alba, that he can barely get through a single commandment without breaking one himself. But that venality is part of the charm of this amiable, outrageous, and frequently hilarious biblical parody. Wain and Marino use the commandments as an excuse to indulge in ridiculous, often surreal, and sometimes tasteless humor. It lives up to the one unbendable commandment of comedy, it's funny, by Pam Grady of the San Francisco Chronicle. So, David Wain, I know that name.
Yes.
He was one of the state.
He was one of the state. And Ken Marino was one of the state. And Michael Showalter. So this is a movie that's 10 interconnected short films, each on the theme of one of the 10 commandments, but weird.
Okay.
I really enjoy this movie. And like I said, it's made and it features a lot of the people from the state, people they've worked with before.
The State being, for those unfamiliar, a sketch comedy series that showed on MTV in the 90s.
Yes.
And which we both enjoyed.
Very much. And the reason that we're doing this as our special Shavuot edition is because Shavuot is the Jewish pilgrimage holiday when we celebrate the giving of the Torah, or most specifically, the giving of the 10 Commandments.
Ah. So you're saying we're watching this instead of the Charlton Heston one?
Well, apart from the title, the 10 Commandments themselves are kind of incidental to the film, The 10 Commandments. It's just the ending. Sorry to give it away. You know, most people consider the Ten Commandments more of a Passover film, which is why ABC shows it on Easter every year.
Well, we'll pass over that for now. And
Like this year, they showed it during the second Seder.
okay.
This is also not a particularly Jewish movie per se, so it's pretty universal, so don't worry about that.
Okay. So I look forward to checking this out. We will stop recording. We will watch this film. And since it's getting a little late, we might be back tomorrow to record the rest of this and our thoughts.
But when you hear this, you won't know that because we're going to edit it together like magic.
Yeah. So you're going to be none the wiser, dear listeners. So,
But we love you anyway.
We do love you anyway. And yeah, I guess let's get to it.
All right. It's The 10.
The 10.
2007's The 10.
Hey, Gila.
Yes, Rob.
Are we back?
I think we're back.
Okay, we've just watched The 10.
Yes, 2007's The 10.
I should explain that we just watched I think the latter 2/3 of The 10.
Ish, yeah.
Because an entire night has elapsed since we last recorded. We began watching the film, turned it off and went to sleep because we're grown-ups and had a schedule to keep. And today's the following evening, and we watched the rest of it. And now we're recording this.
Correct. So that was the first time you'd seen that movie, correct?
That was.
And I hadn't seen it in a while.
It seemed like you knew it pretty well, though. Like, this is one you've watched a lot.
This is one I watched a lot. I do own it on DVD. And I may have downloaded one of the songs from the soundtrack, which is another recap of the movie.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm kind of familiar with it.
I liked it.
I thought you might.
I liked it a lot. It was bizarre and weird, and the sort of thing that I definitely would have been interested in seeing had I known anything about it. It's made by a lot of people from the state, which I loved. It's a pretty goofy take on a well-known chunk of religious iconography, which I dig. And yeah, this is exactly the sort of thing that I would have been interested in seeing. But I had never heard about this for some reason.
Well, I think part of the reason you never heard about it was because it got awful reviews. And it was one of those things that was picked up for a not insignificant amount of money at Sundance that year. Like, this is a festival film. And I think Film picked it up for $4.5 million at Sundance. And it was one of those things when people saw it and they said, why? Why did you do that? It's a very specific sort of humor and comedic sensibility.
Yes.
That you're either really entertained by or really not. And we happen to be people who are entertained by it, which is good. But there were a couple parts that I was apprehensive about showing you because I wasn't sure how you were going to react to them. And B, I think that comedy or no, we as a society have come a really long way in the last 12 years in terms of what's acceptable and what isn't.
Especially particularly where comedy is concerned.
Absolutely.
And there are definitely jokes in this that I'm sure would not fly today. I'm dubious about them flying even then. But they still made me chuckle.
Is this the part where we say here be spoilers so we can talk about what happened?
Yeah, I think this is the part where we say that. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay, here be spoilers.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna talk about the movie in detail and recap details and do all kinds of detailed detailing about it. And so if you haven't seen this and you don't wish to be spoiled, I guess pause us, watch the film, and come back.
That's a good plan. It is kind of a hard movie to recap because there's not a lot of plot. Because there are these 10 interconnected vignettes that are each, 10 minutes long at the outside?
Yeah, plus a kind of framing story.
Right. You know, the thing that always not irked me about this movie, but the fact that the 10 Commandments as presented are in such random order. So, yeah, it rattled me a little bit that they were not in the order to which I am accustomed, and I believe not in the order that any of the major world religions present them. However, if a listener is going to say, no, if somebody is shaking your fist at your computer right now saying, no, Gila, you're wrong, drop us a note. You can contact us on modern.technology under the Contact Us tab. Because I always want to...
For this particular program, the email address is watches@modern.technology.
Even better. I'm
always...
in
the subject line, hey, Gila. Just spelled Gila, exclamation point.
Hey, Gila, you're wrong. Because I would love to hear that. But no, like every time I'm listening to podcasts, I'm like, this person is making a huge mistake, and I want to tell them about it. So regardless of when this episode airs, and regardless of when you're hearing it, if you think I'm wrong, drop me a note. I will be happy to hear from you, I promise.
Or if we're just constantly mispronouncing a word, like Robert Evans in every one of his podcasts, I think picks one or two words to just mangle and act like he's not. He does very good work, but he
doesn't learn how to pronounce things like pogrom or Buttigieg.
Or usury. He was talking about the payday loan scandal on Behind the Bastards, and he pronounced usury in some, like, insane way.
Or my personal favorite mispronunciation of his, memoir.
Yes.
I'm listening at work, and I want to throw things through my computer.
Is this the part of the podcast where we dunk on far more popular podcasts than our own?
Yeah, I think that's what's happening right now.
Okay.
But let's bring it back.
All right,
let's bring it back.
Reeling it back.
Reeling it back. And there are a lot of things that I think people could theoretically be taken aback by in this movie. Mm-hmm. Like the woman whose sexual awakening comes at the hands of Jesus.
Yes. Yes, Jesus Christ himself as a dude who is... planning on that whole Armageddon thing, but first he'd just like to get laid a bunch. Mm-hmm.
He's like, there's always going to be time for the rapture or whatever, but I got stuff to do.
And I was very entertained by this. Again, I maintain a level of respect for people's individual beliefs and or lacks thereof. Everyone is entitled to their own subjective interpretation of these things and decisions on how they want to live any spiritual life that they might choose to pursue.
Unless they're Scientologists.
Well, obviously. But, if comedic portrayals of Jesus Christ offend you, this is probably not the film for you.
If really looking at any sort of religious concept with humor is not a thing for you, this is not a movie you're going to enjoy. There are parts of it that are very funny, but there are parts of it that are very twisted. Mm-hmm. There's a whole segment that's built around rhino shit.
That was entertaining. A rhino voiced by John Benjamin. He of Archer and Bob's Burgers and about a squillion other things.
Most recently, Arby's commercials.
Those two. How would you describe? We started talking about it's 10 vignettes.
10 vignettes.
And a framing story. The framing story is this guy just in a black void with two big prop tablets of the 10 Commandments behind him. And the idea is he's relating these 10 short stories to you by pointing out each commandment. But of course, his framing story ends up with all sorts of things happening in it, and it becomes a story of its own. But the 10 vignettes are each ostensibly linked to one of the commandments.
Sometimes rather loosely.
And they do so in dark, comedic, twisted ways.
As you would expect from the minds behind The State and Wet Hot American Summer and Reno 911 and Viva Variety and Stella And I could keep going, but I'm not going to.
Just don't mention that I love the 80s and I love the 90s junk.
Well, they weren't the brain trust behind that, though. They were just talking heads on it.
No.
And not even all of them, just a couple.
Yeah, but it's still... I still have mental scars from Michael Ian Black staring off into the void going, yeah, there used to be a commercial for a thing. And then they'd show that commercial. And VH1 would be like, yes, money rolling in.
I Love the 80s. Both times. I also liked I Love the 90s.
And I think they eventually got up to I Love the Thing That Happened 10 minutes ago.
Well, and then they had a show for a while. It was a series that aired on the weekends, and it was called Best Week Ever.
I had forgotten about that one.
Sorry, did I dredge up a painful memory?
Well, just painful memories of ignoring that.
Okay, that's fair.
Anyway.
Yes.
So this movie. The question I had for you about this movie.
Yes, you said yesterday, was it, at some point when we were watching, you said, I have a question for you, but I'll wait till we're recording.
Yes.
Okay.
Which is, how did you get introduced to this movie? Because it doesn't seem like something that would normally be in your wheelhouse apart from the cast.
I think the cast had a lot to do with it. I honestly don't remember how I came across this. It might have been on cable and I saw it and thought, hey, this is fun. Yeah, legitimately, I don't remember how I came across it. No. Did I see it on either? Okay, I don't remember. Yeah, I don't remember.
Well, thank you for being so specific.
Anytime.
If there's any other memories I could not dredge up for you, let me know.
Hey, anytime. No, I mean, this movie came out when I was living in the Twin Cities, so I know I saw it before I moved to New York.
Okay.
I don't remember the exact circumstances under which I saw it. I just remember I really liked it.
Fair enough.
And then I bought it.
Fair enough.
And now I'm going to check my Amazon history and see when I bought it. Keep talking.
No, I'm going to make the audience listen to you check your Amazon history.
Well, better that than the...
That was the gate coming down in some place in our neighborhood that has a big metal gate with shutters coming down.
The 10.
The 10.
Ordered November 14th, 2013. November 14th. 2013.
2013.
Yes. So clearly I received a gift certificate for my birthday. And then I bought the 10 and the Mel Brooks collection on Blu-ray.
Huh.
Yeah. But I think that was like a birthday gift for my mom.
Yeah, because we have the Mel Brooks collection on Blu-ray, but that was a gift given to me by, I think, our friend Leo.
I think you're right.
And so that's my copy on this shelf.
Okay.
Or it was originally my copy, now it's ours.
Yeah, it wasn't a gift card. We are getting way in the weeds on this. Okay, pulling it back.
Well, what else have you bought since 2013? Now that that's a whole other podcast,
I did a
I'm
whole
sure.
other podcast, yes.
But okay, so should we go through the sketches?
Yeah, so I've got the Wikipedia page open, which has a brief summary of each of the 10 stories.
All right, Wikipedia.
Wiki, what? Okay, so the first one was, "Thou shalt worship no god before me."
Mm-hmm.
A man becomes a celebrity after falling out of a plane and becoming permanently embedded in the ground thanks to a superstar agent. After a swift rise to stardom, he becomes prideful and arrogant, referring to himself as a god. His career falls apart and he loses everything. His fiancée leaves him for a TV anchorman.
And I think one thing we're going to see with these plot summaries is that sometimes you can read the plot summary of something and kind of get the feel for what the story is like.
And this is not
one of those times.
Nope.
If you have not seen this, like, basically these stories are excuses for a bunch of weird and wacky and insane and just plain strange jokes to be hung all over them. And so the experience of watching this film is not one of just absorbing these stories, but of getting barraged with gags.
Exactly. Yes. So one of the first things I noticed, you get to, hadn't seen it in a while. You do notice new things when you see it. And the first thing I noticed is that at the beginning, the way the guy gets embedded in the ground is he's skydiving.
Yes.
And forgets his parachute. And the skydiving instructor who comes running up and says, okay, here's your parachute.
After he's jumped out of the plane.
After he's already jumped out of the plane. I said, oh my God, it's John Hamm.
Because
in 2007, he was just a jobbing actor. Nobody really knew who John Hamm was at the time. It's pre-Mad Men.
Pre-Mad Men.
Pre-Mad Men.
So, yes, it was this guy, he's talking to camera, who is his fiancée filming him, and just talking about, I'm not nervous about this, as nervous as I am about getting married to you. So they establish their fiancés, and then he jumps out of the plane without his chute, and you then see her running up to him on the ground, and he's embedded in the ground with just one arm and his shoulder and his head sticking out, and then like a bit of his leg sticking out at a weird angle.
In a field in the middle of nowhere.
Right. And hilarity ensues.
He begins getting news coverage, and then he gets an agent who gets him a TV show. So they build a set around the floor. Because
the gag is that they can't move him or he'll die instantly. Right. So he's got to stay where he is. They get married with him sticking up out of the ground there.
Or they're going to get married with him sticking out of the ground there.
Right.
And then he gets on this show. He has a lot of fans. People begin referring to him as a god. And then a bunch of kids try to do a copycat stunt, and they all die. Public opinion sours on him. He and his fiancée break up. His agent goes away.
Agent played by Ron Silver.
Agent played by the late, great Ron Silver. And then that's the end of that one. Oh, right, and the fiancé goes and takes up with the news anchor who had been doing a story on him.
Right, and then I think the last shot of the sketch is the news anchor talking about him like 5 years later, and he's like, everyone used to love this guy, now I hate him, and then it's the end.
So that was number one. Did you like number one?
I did. I think it's safe to say I liked all of these.
Yeah. I think it set a very interesting tone for the film, and there were... The film. And there were The film. And there were a few callbacks that were established here that come up later. Not just characters, but...
Right, because like with the sketch show, you see the same actors come back in different contexts and stuff. But here they're sometimes playing the same character again from a previous sketch, just like in the new story.
Right.
So.
I mean, they make sense in both situations.
Right.
Okay, that was number one.
That was number one.
Number two. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. A librarian has a sexual awakening in Mexico with a swarthy local who turns out to be Jesus Christ. She eventually settles down and marries her co-worker, but is secretly reminded of her fling with Jesus whenever her family prays before a meal.
Yes, and this was Gretchen Mol.
This is Gretchen Mol and Justin Theroux. And 80 Miles is the guy she winds up marrying.
Yeah.
For what it's worth.
But yeah, so she goes to Mexico, and she's like doing her tourist Spanish and everything, and she ends up meeting this guy who's just a handyman around this farm that she's staying at. Except he's Jesus, and also they start shagging. So
most of this one is narrated in Spanish, which is then subtitled.
Yes.
So occasionally the sound would drop out, and then there would be a moment I was like, did the DVD break? But no, it did not. I think that's also paranoia from my old crappy DVD player, which would occasionally just stop.
But yeah, another fun sketch. She realizes that he's not just Jesus, he's actually Jesus when they're out on a canoe, and he stops and sees some flowers, so he walks across the water to get a flower for her. And comes back, and she's like, "Wait, you're that Jesus?" And then he's like, "Oh, no, this is when these relationships always get spoiled." But yeah,
cute.
And she keeps having great sex with Jesus, and then eventually her vacation ends, and she goes back and marries her library coworker dude.
Yes. I was reading some reviews earlier, and at least one of them mentioned specifically this sketch as one that didn't work.
I could see people being, people of a certain persuasion being way offended by this. I am not among them, but I could see that happening.
Yeah.
There are always people who are going to automatically get upset at this sort of thing.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I thought it was a pretty solid sketch, and I enjoyed the Spanish gags, and her host, who I think was like her uncle or somebody, like saying things to her in English that were really filthy, and she's like, "Oh, I don't think that's what you really mean." And then he asks his wife in Spanish to translate, and it turns out that's exactly what he was trying to say. So,
yeah. We got more on 2, or are we good?
I think that's about the size of it.
All right. Number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Thou shalt not murder.
Thou shalt not murder.
Shall not murder. A doctor kills his patient by leaving a pair of scissors inside her abdomen during surgery. Despite expecting the charges to be dropped because he left the scissors in as a goof, the judge and jury sentence him to life in prison. The judge also disbars the plaintiff's lawyer, who is then told that he should consider a job as a tour guide at the local nuclear power plant.
Chekhov's job assignment.
So the doctor in question, by the way, is the one who announced in the first vignette that if they moved the guy in the ground, that he would die.
Yeah, he was a doctor in that sketch.
He was a doctor in that
sketch. So it's the same doctor, played by
Ken Marino.
Ken Marino, who, if you've seen The State, you remember the "I want to dip my balls in it" guy. That's what you remember him for.
He also co-wrote the movie.
Yeah.
David Wain and Ken Marino co-wrote the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those very interesting. It's a state kind of thing where they're just playing this ridiculousness seriously.
Yeah, and that's always the one of the most fun kinds of comedy for me. It's like the old school Police Squad, not the Naked Gun movies, which went overboard, but the old school Police Squad and Airplane, the Farce movie, where they're saying the most ridiculous and stupid things, but they're playing it completely straight. And that's that kind of comedy is generally guaranteed to floor me.
So there's a scene where the doctor's being interrogated by the police after his patient has died. And did you do this? He said, I would never intentionally harm one of my patients unless I was doing it as a goof. The cop says, did you leave the scissors in her? And he's like, as a goddamn goof.
Yeah, the cop played by Liev Schreiber.
Yes. So you wind up... It's fascinating that this man who's been a doctor for 20 years, 20 plus years, ostensibly believes that saying on a goof would mean that this destructive thing he's done doesn't really count. Yeah.
And I love it. It's one of those like little weird conceits that can be used to spark this whole chain of events. And yeah, I've actually known people I could... I knew people as a kid that I could picture growing up into this guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we all have.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. And then he winds up in prison. And there's a brief bit with the judge and the jury. The judge is crusty?
Yeah, very crusty and very sweary. She looks like a dignified older woman judge, and she just lets off with strings of well-crafted swearing.
Very well-crafted swearing, but swearing nonetheless. This movie is a hard R.
Yes, it's a very hard R.
Language and sexy times and...
Yeah. There's nudity, there's all kinds of...
I was almost like, is there nudity? Oh, yes, there is.
Yes, there
is.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. This one also puts a lot in motion for the rest of the movie. So that's number 3. Number 4 is Honor Thy Mother and Thy Father. This one is really hardly connected to anything with one brief exception. Yeah, it's funny, but it's very weird. Okay. A white mother enlists an Arnold Schwarzenegger impersonator to be a father figure to her black children after telling them he is their biological father. It is revealed that their father is in reality Arsenio Hall, but they decide to keep the Arnold impersonator as part of the family. Despite not being able to imitate Arsenio, he can do a pretty good Eddie Murphy impression.
And again, this is one that, like, you could see people being way offended by what they're doing. I was entertained. The sketch starts with these babies being born, and
Ken Marino is the doctor delivering them.
Ken Marino is also the doctor delivering them. The babies are born, and the very white mother and father are holding these two twin African American babies, and they're very happy. And then, quick cut to the father dying many years later, and these kids, now grown, are two young black men, and asking their mother, now that Dad's gone, we have to ask you, like, what's the deal with us being black and you being white? And she's like, oh, well, first their mother, like, in a very 50s housewife sitcom mother, prim and proper sort of delivery, starts telling them about all these celebrities back in the day that she used to fuck.
She was a celebrity interviewer, so
Yes.
she met Denzel Washington, and she met Morgan Freeman, which also reads a little bit differently now than it did in 2007.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sidney Poitier. And so they're asking, so who's our father? And she says to them, Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Because that makes sense.
Because that makes total sense. The kids are like, wait, are you sure? And she's, yeah, your father's Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was the only one I was with, when I got pregnant. Some time passes, and then she goes, guess who's coming over? It's Arnold Schwarzenegger himself, your father. And in walks Oliver Platt.
Whom I will watch literally in anything.
Yeah. Yeah, he's one of those, if you don't know who he is, he's one of those, hey, it's that guy actors.
If you don't know who it is, pause this. Go look him up right now.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind for me is a movie called The Imposters that he did with Stanley Tucci.
And the first thing that comes to mind for me is, well, he's currently on Chicago Med, playing the head of psychiatry at the hospital. But also, he was in a truly terrible movie called 3 to Tango, where he played Matthew Perry's gay best friend.
Huh. I somehow missed that one.
You didn't miss anything, you just didn't see it.
But so for those unfamiliar, he's sort of a middle-aged kind of doughy white guy.
Yeah, could be Jewish, could be Italian.
But he comes in with like the Arnold sunglasses and the leather jacket and doing a sort of Arnold Schwarzenegger impression.
If you're feeling charitable, it could sort of sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Lots of I'll be back and this and that. And she's like, yo, kids, it's your father, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so the kids are still confused.
She's like, I couldn't get through the switchboard.
Yeah.
But this guy does Arnold impersonations here locally, so...
Yeah. This was 2007, so very topical. She's like, well, Arnold's governor of California now, and he's very hard to get hold of. So I thought if I got this impressionist who does like corporate events to come in and just be your father for you, it might give you a taste of what it would be like if he were really here. And so these kids, very charitably decide to just go along with it. And cut to them running around in the backyard, like throwing around a football with this Arnold impersonator in still in his leather jacket and sunglasses.
It's strange, but it's fun.
Yeah. And kind of sweet.
Yeah, it really is. And then at the end, the boys do like a straight to camera thing about what family is.
Yeah. Well, but before that, they
Mom realizes
that
she was wrong.
Yeah, she was wrong. She was actually not with Arnold Schwarzenegger when she got pregnant. She was with Arsenio Hall, and the kids are like, "Oh!" And then the impersonator starts looking uncomfortable and he goes, "What does that mean for me?" Because at this point, he's part of the family, and they're like, "Well, can you do Arsenio?" And he's like, "No, I can't do Arsenio, but I can do a pretty good Eddie Murphy." And he starts doing like 80s Eddie Murphy impressions. Then they're a happy family again, and then sort of the action freezes and the kids turn to camera.
Yeah. It's a sweet meditation on what family is and isn't.
Yeah, and they're like, some families are like this, some families are like this. Some families are a guy doing an impression of a guy the same race as the guy who was your real father.
It's ludicrous, but it's sweet.
Yes.
Also, one more fun fact about Oliver Platt. His brother is the head restaurant critic for New York Magazine.
I always thought that about Oliver Platt.
Okay, number 5.
Number 5.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods.
And this starts to get...
This one's weird.
But this is Liev Schreiber.
A police detective covets his neighbor's CAT scan machine.
Yeah.
After continuously buying additional CAT scan machines to one-up each other, both of their wives leave them. After hitting rock bottom, the two neighbors reconcile and go out for a drink. Meanwhile, a disaster at a nuclear power plant during a school tour, led by the former lawyer from the third story, leaves a busload of school children in need of several CAT scan machines. They arrive at the neighbors' houses, but the doors are locked and the two men are at the bar, so all the children die. Now, I don't think this really expresses the number of CAT scan machines these men had.
Yeah, it starts with him looking out the window. Each neighbor is this sort of mustached dad with a wife and kid, and Liev Schreiber's looking out the window at his neighbor and going, God damn it, they've got a CAT scan machine, and so he's got to go. We'll just wait for a siren to go by here. We've got our windows wide open.
It's nice outside, but
it's very nice outside.
But then we get sirens and stuff.
Yeah, usually the outdoor noise, I think, lends a little nice ambiance to this recording.
Yes, but in this particular circumstance.
Yeah. Okay, so back to the CAT scan machines.
So they each get one CAT scan machine.
Yeah, they each get one CAT scan machine. Then he sees the neighbor getting another CAT scan machine. And so, damn it, gotta one-up him again, and he goes to the phone and gets another CAT scan machine. Meantime, there are lots of little throwaway gags with him just like randomly punching his wife and kid. Again, you have to be in a certain frame of mind to be entertained by all this. But
so basically, every square foot of the houses is taken up by CAT scans.
Yeah, eventually, every square foot of the houses are taken up by CAT scans. There are CAT scans on the roof, in the yard, everywhere, and you see these two houses, which are pretty identical-looking houses, just different colors. And at the same time, both wives are taking both kids into their family cars with a bunch of stuff strapped to the roof.
Which, I mean, they're both station wagons.
Yeah, they're both station wagons, and they're both leaving their husbands because of this whole CAT scan machine obsession thing. And the neighbors just like give each other a dirty look, and go back into their houses and start ordering more CAT scan machines to keep one-upping each other.
Like semi-trucks full of CAT scan machines are coming.
Eventually, like container trucks, just massive amounts of CAT scan machines.
Just they're everywhere. So, cut to school trip at the nuclear power plant, and they're at the reactor, and one of the kids says, "Hey, doesn't this look like it's overheated?" And the tour guide, who again was the prosecutor from earlier, from the doctor sketch, the doctor, the goof doctor, giving the tour, and he said, "No, our safety protocols are totally fine." Mm-hmm. And then the whole thing melts down. Mm-hmm. Kids have to get out.
The whole thing melts down. Red lights and sirens and everything, and then you see someone at the plant yelling at this guy, and he's like, "These kids might have been dosed with radiation, and we won't know until it's too late, unless we can get them all CAT scans."
But how are we going to find that many CAT scan machines? Meanwhile, the two neighbors have decided they're just in too sorry a state to continue being in their houses. They go out to get a drink.
Yeah, their houses are at this point completely packed with CAT scan machines. They're like sleeping on them, tripping over them. They both look like hell. They're like, they go to the bar to have a friendly drink about the whole thing because they're both pretty frazzled, and they both lust their wives and kids. So
the son of one of the guys was at this field trip, and he said, my dad and his neighbor have as many CAT scan machines as you could possibly need. So they all pile on the bus and go to this house. Mm-hmm. The doors are locked and no one is home. Yeah, and these kids and their everyone else who was on this field trip are just pounding at the doors, let us in, and the kid's like, I don't have my key. And so while this is happening and these kids are desperately trying to get into the house for these CAT scan machines, you see the two guys at the bar just kind of hanging out. Bonnie Raitt's playing on the jukebox. They're start singing along with the song together, and just clinking their beer glasses and putting it all behind them. And cut back to the lawns of these two houses, where pretty much everyone's dead except one of the kids are trying to give CPR to one of the other kids, and with the whole "don't you die on me" thing. So this happens to be on the news that they show at the bar, and then they were like, we should probably go now. Yeah.
these two guys are watching on the news, and as they're describing in detail, like, but the owners of these houses where there are so many hoarded CAT scan machines that could have saved these children are nowhere to be found, and they're just kind of uncomfortably looking at each other and decide it's time to go.
It's one of those look up in the sky and whistle sorts of things.
Yeah.
It makes no sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it makes no sense, which is why it's funny. I understand that. But it's just kind of out of left field.
Yeah.
Very.
Even for this movie, it's out of left field.
Well, if you thought that was out of left field,
And then,
wait till we got coming up next, which was, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. So we are back again with the doctor, who's in prison.
Yes. It strikes me that I'm probably going to have to put trigger warnings at the beginning of this episode when I edit it all together. Thanks, past Rob. Love, future Rob.
I mean, this is the one that definitely was not appropriate then. Is
Would totally not fly now.
not even a little. Basically,
Just come out and say it. The sketch is a long prison rape joke.
yeah. And, they try to, like, subvert romantic comedy tropes in this, and Ken Marino and Rob Corddry are really, like, working hard.
Yeah, it's Ken Marino's doctor in jail. You saw him at the end of his vignette. Get brought to jail where the guy he's in the cell with starts beating him up, and it sort of leaves it there. Now we come back to him. You see him in jail. This other prisoner just transferred over from Leavenworth, and they're in the prison yard, and they start talking about stuff and kind of getting along well.
I mean, it's a meet cute. It's definitely a meet cute.
It's a meet cute, but then Ken Marino's like, it pushes the romantic comedy buttons of the meet cute, and then Ken Marino's like, well, I've got this cellmate, and yeah, he rapes me every night.
It's like, I'm taken.
Yeah, I'm taken. That's exactly it. Comedy. And so this other guy, like, it shows them they continue to hang out at the prison, and they're becoming really great friends. And the other guy, who I don't know who's playing him, but he looked familiar.
Yeah, he definitely did. I don't know who it was.
But Leavenworth guy, he's finally like, I understand you're taken and I respect that, but I just really wish I were the one raping you every night. And it's that whole romantic comedy trope of like, oh, you're just you're just projecting or this and that, and it's how I really feel. And then he's like, Ken Marino eventually ends up going back to his cellmate, and they do like a breakup.
Yeah. We're really just cellmates now. We're just going through the motions. Like it.
Yeah.
They're trying to play it as a romantic comedy.
Mm-hmm.
But
while also pointing out, well, as long as you're being raped against your will by someone.
Well, that's what makes it rape, isn't it?
Yeah, and like, yeah. Out of everything in this movie, this was rough, and I won't say I didn't laugh, because I did.
But at the same time,
I could quote other jokes from this film. I will never quote these jokes.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
In as much as I'm relating some of them now, but in a reviewing and journalistic sort of manner. So the whole spin on coveting thy neighbor's wife is just wanting the guy who a different guy in the prison is busy raping. And so, like, they do the breakup, and he's like, oh, get out of here, you nut, and go do what you have to do. And so he goes to this Leavenworth guy's cell, and he's like, well, I'm not taken anymore. And so they get to raping. So
the guy who transferred in from Leavenworth said, so you know what this means, don't you? And the doctor's like, I do.
Yeah.
I know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And then the prison guard sees them and starts reciting pseudo-Shakespeare.
No, it was Shakespeare.
Oh, it was Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the All's Well That Ends Well speech from... it's on the tip of my brain. I'll remember it later.
Is it not from All's Well?
But
no, I mean, it struck me as close to it's similar to the speech that Puck gives at the end of Midsummer Night's Dream.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No, it's very, but it's what he's doing. It's like
Right.
very, very...
Right. And it says
very close.
The last line is all's well that ends well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have more to say about this one?
No, I think that about covers it.
Okay. So the seventh one, the second half are really weird.
Well, they're all weird, but like it just keeps they just keep pushing the make it weirder button.
So in Thou Shalt Not Steal, the woman from the first story, who has recently gotten married to the TV anchor from the first story,
who was played by
Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder.
And the anchor was played by a guy named Mather Zickel. Yeah.
But, Winona Ryder, the.
So they're on their honeymoon. A ventriloquist is performing She Falls for the Dummy.
Yeah, the ventriloquist and his dummy do a bit of crowd work, and they're talking to her, and the dummy's like flirting with the girl in that sort of ventriloquist act kind of way.
She completely goes for it.
Yeah, she goes for it. She takes it seriously. They go back to the ventriloquist dressing room after the show. The ventriloquist answers the door, and she's all like, "I love the show, and can I talk to what's the dummy's name?
Gary.
Gary. Yeah, can I talk to Gary?" And so the ventriloquist is like, "Okay, whatever." But then she starts seriously flirting with the dummy and not the ventriloquist, and it's making the husband uncomfortable, and it's making the ventriloquist uncomfortable. And finally, he's like, "Gary's tired, and I think we got to go now." And he puts the dummy in his little suitcase and closes the door.
So then she sneaks out of the hotel room. Again, it's their wedding night. She sneaks out of the hotel room, goes to the ventriloquist dressing room, steals the dummy.
Right.
Has sex with the dummy.
Yeah.
Has a lot of sex with the dummy.
First, she takes the dummy to the bar, and the dummy's just sitting on the bar, not doing anything. But she keeps talking to it, and then eventually she just starts making out with it. Winona Ryder, famous actor,
Academy Award nominee.
Academy Award nominee Winona Ryder, starts smooching this dummy, and then cut to her having, in the next room in the hotel, having wild sex with this dummy, on the other side of the wall where her new husband is trying to sleep in bed.
Yes.
And, the bed's banging on the wall and everything, and finally he goes over and finds out it's his wife cheating on him with this dummy.
His wife of, one day.
Meanwhile, the ventriloquist has gone and talked to a cop about his dummy being stolen. The cop tells him, well, you should call the police. The husband tears into the room, starts beating up the dummy for screwing his wife.
Then the ventriloquist shows up, takes the dummy.
Takes the dummy, and then you see the husband and wife crying and sitting on the floor, and she's like, I just don't love you anymore. And intercut with this guy, the ventriloquist, talking to his dummy, and the dummy just saying supportive things, and it's time to move on to him. And it's him working the dummy, but still they're having a conversation. I was once in a play where I played a character who had a puppet on his hand, and I had conversations with myself, and at one point I had a duet with myself. It was a play called Aisle 6 by frequent collaborator Nicola Rose. Fun show. So this guy's having serious breakup talks with his dummy, while Winona Ryder is having serious breakup talks with her husband. And finally, you see Winona Ryder and the dummy in their car, while the husband and the ventriloquist and the cop all
wave goodbye
to them as Winona Ryder drives away with this dummy in the passenger seat. And she's like, I feel so alive, and I feel, this is amazing. And she starts crying as she's driving away with this wooden dummy.
At one point, she's crying hysterically with both her hands off the wheel. Car is still moving. You can see the steering wheel going, and I'm like, oh my God, she's going to cause a major accident. It was amazing. Strange but fun.
Yeah.
And kudos to Winona Ryder, who, this was 2000. This movie came out in 2007, so it was probably filmed in 2006, when her career was not in a great place.
Which was a shame. She's fun.
Absolutely. And it's ridiculous that she got canceled as hard as she did for shoplifting.
Well, she continues to be likable in anything.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that sketch happens. And where are we now?
We are at Thou Shalt Not Bear False Witness, which is a cartoon.
Mostly a cartoon.
Mostly animated.
It starts with the ventriloquist now waking up in a drug den. Mm-hmm. No dummy. But there are a bunch of crusty older guys just all around him, all in various stages of drug den-ness. And he's like, well, I'm going to need some more heroin. And they throw him lying rhino, a packet of lying rhino.
The packet of lying rhino. The ventriloquist, having lost his dummy and become a homeless heroin addict, is told by another homeless man a story about an animated rhinoceros voiced by
H. John Benjamin,
who earns a reputation as a liar. After learning that a band of wiener dogs is intent on infecting others with a fatal STD, the rhinoceros tries to warn everyone. Unfortunately, nobody believes him, and they all succumb to the STD following an orgy. It is then revealed that the rhinoceros now sells drugs to the homeless men.
This whole thing happens in a really well animated cartoon, in a very sort of like underground R. Crumb kind of style, bit of Ralph Bakshi, like all those twisted animators who were working in those really weird days of experimental film. It works. I think it's a lot of fun to watch, and at the end of the animation, this is all to explain to the ventriloquist in his drug den why they call it this packet of heroin lying rhino. And finally he's like, well, why do you call it lying rhino? And it's like, because the lying rhino at the end of the story is a heroin dealer. And they say, because he drops the heroin off. And a running gag throughout the cartoon is that the lying rhino just like randomly poops in places and a flower immediately springs out of it in a cartoony sort of way. So then a guy comes in with an afro hairstyle and wearing the clothes that the lying rhino did in the cartoon. He speaks in the voice of John Benjamin, though it's not him physically. But he's just a guy with that hair and those clothes. And he comes in and drops off some heroin. And then like the ventriloquist is confused by this. He's going, he's the rhino. And then you see the rhino guy, leave and just randomly poop in the doorway, and a flower springs out of it.
Okay. Number 9.
Number 9.
Thou shalt not commit adultery. So we got to talk about the framing story.
Yeah, now while this has all been going on, between each of these sketches, you see some of the framing story with the guy in his black void and the stone tablet props. And
his wife.
Yeah.
And, at the very beginning of the movie, before he even comes out, you hear him say, I can't come home right now. I have to do the 10 Commandments. I have to do the 10 stories. You knew this when you married me.
Yeah.
So he and his wife are having problems.
Mm-hmm.
And it also turns out that he's been...
And in among giving his intros to the stories, he's also doing these asides of, like, the problems that are going on with him and his wife and how it's not his fault and this and that. And you see the wife show up. They have awkward arguments, and this whole thing keeps building throughout the framing story segments.
You see the young woman he's cheating on his wife with whom he's cheating on his wife.
Yeah, who was Jessica Alba.
Jessica Alba, yeah.
Yeah.
In the film, the vignette, which is the shalt not commit adultery vignette, he and his ex-wife run into each other on the street.
Right. Because now he's out of the framing story. He's in the vignette.
They run into each other on the street, and
by this time he was arguing with his wife and arguing with his wife, and then finally cheating on his wife, then trying to justify the cheating on his wife, and then he goes off and leaves his wife and marries the younger woman.
He takes up with the younger woman. I don't know if they ever actually got married.
Right. Then he tries to go back and visit his wife. You see him knocking on a door in this black void, and she answers, and there's another guy behind her. She's moved on. At the same time, like, things are starting to get rocky with him and Jessica Alba.
Yes. Because
she's a young girl who wants to go out and party all night. And he's like, well, why don't we read from the book of Kierkegaard I got for you? Like, they're being very subtle with this whole thing.
He's like, can you buy me a pony?
Yeah. Then this segment happens, this sketch happens.
So they bump into each other on the street.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing? Oh, I broke up with Liz, who was the young woman.
Mm-hmm.
She was just too young. She says, "Oh, I broke up with the guy I was seeing.
Mm-hmm.
His penis was too big."
Yes.
Asks if he wants to go get a cup of coffee. He says, "Oh my gosh, I'm married now, and I don't want to make the same mistakes in this marriage." She says, "Who did you marry?" And he says, "Diane Wiest."
Would you explain for listeners who may be unfamiliar who Diane Wiest is?
Diane Wiest is an actress. She's an Oscar-winning actress.
Who doesn't show up in the film.
Who doesn't show up in the film. I just talk about her. Diane Wiest was in Woody Allen movies. She did a couple of years as the district attorney on classic Law and Order. You'd recognize her. You'd recognize her.
He starts talking about how happy he is with her, and the residual checks don't hurt, and just painting this picture. And so they're talking, and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, bye now." And they lean in for the friendly kiss, and then they start kissing again and again and again.
Yes. So then he calls Diane Wiest, and he's like, "We had a good run, but I think we're done now."
Yeah, and then you hear his side of the conversation where he's like, "Oh, yeah, really good. Well, okay, I'll have my lawyer send over the papers." So they're having a very amicable divorce, like right there on the phone, while his ex-wife is there in front of him, just like looking on with anticipation.
Yep, that's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then so that's that one. It's fine. It's a nice resolution of that whole story we've been watching.
Yeah.
And then we get into remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Mm-hmm. Which brings back Gretchen Mol and the red-haired dude she married, who
80
was 80 miles, and their two kids, who go to church on Sunday. And
one day, Oliver is the man's name.
Okay.
Right. Who says that he doesn't want to go to church.
Yeah. So he basically fakes sick.
He fakes sick. Coming down with a bit of food poisoning, he says. Sitting here coughing because I've come down with a bit of food poisoning.
Yeah. So Gretchen Mol takes the kids to church on her own, and he realizes, "Oh, I've got the whole house to myself for 3 hours. What am I going to do?" And then you see him, like, undo a button on his pajama shirt, and then undo another one, and then he takes off the pajama shirt, and then you see a shot of his feet as he takes off his pajama pants, and he's like... Then smash cut to him working on his car and talking to his buddy.
Played by Bobby Cannavale.
We
love Bobby Cannavale.
And he's saying, "Yeah, I was just, naked for 3 hours, just hanging around the house. And it was great." And he starts telling him how great it was. And he invites him over for the next Sunday.
Smash cut to Ding Dong.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Yeah, come over. We'll be naked together. And this isn't a gay thing. This isn't a sexual thing. Just, it's a lot of fun just hanging around and being naked."
So the next Sunday, Bobby Cannavale comes over. The two of them get naked and decide to put on music, and they wind up listening to Roberta Flack.
As you do.
They're prancing through the house, saying like music critic things about Roberta Flack and her music.
Yeah, just really having letting loose and having a good time, and they're naked. And it's all like...
It's just bros being bros.
Yeah, just bros being bros.
Listening to Roberta Flack.
Mm-hmm.
Naked.
And this is where a lot of the nudity in this film comes in.
Yes.
Because these guys are walking around bare butt naked, though I think they limit it to rear nudity.
Yes. And the following weeks, more men just keep showing up, and you see these guys just having these normal conversations.
Yeah, and just like having a barbecue in the backyard, and like hanging around the living room, and
drinking
having
beer,
small talk, drinking
listening
beers,
to Roberta Flack.
Listening to more Roberta Flack, which apparently is a thing. They just keep listening to Roberta Flack, and one of the new guys like, but one of the new guys is like, "Roberta Flack, huh?" And it's like, one of the other guys is like, "Yeah, apparently it's been a thing since day one of this whole thing." And then he gets a call from the church
that services have ended earlier than they're expecting. His wife's on the way home, and this house is full of naked men and beer bottles.
Yeah. And so they have the classic sort of 80s movie thing of like trying to clean up the party before the family gets home. And you see them like all in the living room, all still naked, and trying to hide the beers and everything. And then Gretchen Mol unlocks the door, and quickly you see just the husband in his silk bathrobe turn around, and he's like, "Oh, you're home early." And she notices he's acting weird.
Yes. She says, "What's going on?" And he said, "I've got to tell you that I never want to go to church again. When I'm home on Sundays, I lounge around the house naked, because maybe observing the Sabbath isn't about going to church. Maybe it's about spending time enjoying God's creation in a different way than you would the rest of the week. I'm paraphrasing, but...
And he goes, okay, come out, fellas, because he's putting his cards out on the table, and all these other naked men come out from behind curtains and couches and
clutching
tables.
Clutching
throw pillows and beer bottles and
whatever.
And so this is a living room full of naked men.
Which then turns into...
And it's Gretchen Mol still in the doorway with the two kids.
And she says...
And she says...
if you ever have a naked party in my house on a Sunday, you can kiss my black ass goodbye.
Gretchen Mol, for those unfamiliar, is not black.
She's very pale and very blonde.
Yeah. And it was obviously shot at two different times, the two different camera angles, because she's there with these two kids, and they're ostensibly in the same room with all these naked guys. And this guy, Oliver, goes into this big song and dance number about how awesome it is to be naked and how you don't have to go to church.
It's not crude to be nude on the Sabbath is the beginning. And, oh my God. And it turns into this giant production number.
Yeah, with all the naked guys just as the backup dancers. And
then all of a sudden the rest of the cast is there. They're recapping the entire movie.
Yeah, the rest of the cast from all the other sketches shows up. And
Except Ron Silver.
But, he was Ron Silver. All of a sudden, this is, for some reason, on a
concert
like glam
stage.
rock looking concert stage.
Everybody's wearing sequins.
Everyone's wearing sequins except Oliver, who's still naked. And they all start singing, recapping their various stories from throughout the film.
And at the end, 80 Miles, who is now dressed in like a nude bodysuit with flowers at the crotch.
Yes.
And Paul Rudd are singing to each other, what's going on? What's it all about? Haven't you figured it out? It's all about love.
Yeah.
And then, the whole cast is standing there singing about love, and then the movie ends. And then there are two more musical recaps over the credits.
Yeah. And these songs themselves are brilliantly written. They're it's the characters singing about what happened to them in the movie, but like then just randomness, like Gretchen Mol describing her story about how she fell in love with Jesus, and she goes, "But actually, that's fiction. My name's Gretchen Mol." Like just apropos of nothing. And that's how it ends, just with this big sort of happy production number, and then they roll the credits, and it's another song recapping the entire movie.
And singing, and there's like a couplet about each of the actors. Some things about their characters, some things about the actors themselves or their previous body of work. And my favorite line from it is...
As each actor pops on screen, the singer is singing about that actor.
Yes. Everybody do the Ron Silver hustle.
Yeah. It was perfect.
Yeah.
And then it goes on to regular credit roll, and
then another song, which recaps the movie again, but backwards this time. So... The first production number is called Written in Stone, and that was written by David Yazbek, who is a composer of some renown.
Yes. He was recently on the Gilbert Gottfried podcast.
Yes. And wrote the music for last year's Tony-winning Best Musical, The Band's Visit.
Uh-huh.
Yes. And then there's a song called The End of the Ten. And then there's another song after it called The End of the Ten. And that one's sung by Peter Sallet, who... stepped in to play the lying rhino at the end of that sketch.
Yeah, physically playing the lying rhino while John Benjamin still did his voice.
Exactly. Everything's connected, which is par for the course with these guys.
And then the final line is like, you've reached the end of the end of the end of the...
We've come to the end of the end of the 10.
Yeah. So this was quite a picture. And I both can't see and can see why it's not more popular and well known.
Yeah. I mean, even among
this isn't quite like if you know like really renowned weird ass sketch movies, you might know the name Movie 43, which is one of these, except like really like completely. It's one of those movies that's trying to be terrible, and this isn't quite that level of probable offense, but it's also like this movie is funny, and Movie 43 doesn't always get there. We'll talk about that maybe sometime in the future, but
maybe.
But if I want this marriage to last, maybe I won't show you that one. But it was fun to watch, and it's one of those movies that I think I could probably watch again in like either with you or like in company that I'm very, very sure of.
Yeah, this is not something to watch with like people you've just met.
Yeah, this is not a casual let's throw on a movie. This is this is gonna like probably piss you off in 7 different directions while making you laugh kind of movie.
Yes. So something that I was thinking about when we were talking about how the vignettes got progressively stranger. Mm-hmm. Okay. So in Judaic belief, so the way that the Ten Commandments are set up is you start with the positive ones and then you go to the negative ones. And there's also an argument that could be made that the first 5 are commandments between people and God, and the last 5 are commandments between people and people. There's also an argument that could be made that honor thy mother and father is kind of a bridge between the 2. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the way they divided these up, the funny ones were at the beginning, and then the real weird ones were at the back end.
Ah.
I taught a class on Judaism in popular culture and in places you might not necessarily be looking for it. I think that might have been why I watched this movie, because I thought maybe it would be appropriate or might be useful.
You didn't show this to your students?
No.
Okay.
No, I liked having that job. I didn't want to get fired from it. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for... It's not something you necessarily think would be a jumping off point for discussion in the way that we found it to be. But at the same time, I think that there's a lot of cult interest in the state and both their work as the state and their work since. The kind of cult that has grown up around Wet Hot American Summer.
Yeah.
The movie and both follow-up TV shows. No one knows about the 10. I find that very interesting.
Well, we know about it now,
and we are, yes.
So do our listeners now.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that was the 10. I'm glad I've seen it. I'm not sure how much time will have to pass before I see it again someday.
So, thank you for joining us on this special Shavuot edition of Modern Technology Watches.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for taking the ride with us.
And we'll catch you next time.
Absolutely.
You've been listening to episode 102 of Modern Technology Watches with Gila Drazen and Rob Vincent. Go to modern.technology on the web for more information on this program, their other podcasts, and our social media nonsense. Our theme music is The Promise by Torley Wong, released Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 3.0. More information at modern.technology/music. Find more from Torley at torley.com. Thank you, Torley. Content from wikipedia.org is used under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 3.0. This podcast is released under Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 4.0, produced by modern.technology. Send us email at watches@modern.technology.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.
Number 9.